Hey, everybody. This is once again our Futureproofing 66 champions. We had a great session back on February 25th. This is one of our follow-up sessions, and we have one of our special guests that I will introduce shortly. We kind of fell onto a formula that we thought we would kind of approach every time we do one of these. Hopefully just tell you a little bit about what's coming up in our world, hopefully your world too. Talk about the Wellspring, and the idea would be to bring in an author or some type of thought leader into our discussions that have either just completed something or is in the wake of completing something. And so Soren Nielsen, who I'll introduce in a minute, has kindly joined us today on that front. We'll talk about a future vault and three things that we've been really tumbling about, and maybe some contribution that we'd love from you. Our next idea, a soapbox, will allow you to jump on a soapbox and understand what is going on in your world and how we could collaborate. And finally, our bulletin board of opportunities, where there's probably two or three things that myself and Andrea are working on that we'd love to get your involvement. So in terms of our schedule moving ahead, first of all, we've set up a private LinkedIn group. So we just set it up a couple of days ago. If you get a chance, go to Futureproofing 66 on LinkedIn. There's, I think we've just teased it out, and I think 22, 23 of you guys have kindly already joined us, but we'll make sure that we'll get the full post out to everybody and get those numbers up. And in terms of our future, Andrea, we've got something right on the heels of this discussion. So we do have to close at the hour. We've got something called the Futureproofing Awards. We are recognizing the world's best and trying to get ahead of the future. We've got two sessions on that, the 6th and the 13th. We're going to do a Clubhouse session on cognitive biases on the 8th. So if you're on Clubhouse, the coolest new social network in town, I'm not too sure how many of you are on there. We're going to do something then. And then as well, we have I've got midnight, I guess, on my time, but we're going to do kind of our Futureproofing global tour. I think this is how we do things in the pandemic. So if you know anybody in the Middle East, we've got a midnight session, April 13th Eastern time. So I'll definitely be getting my glass of wine out for that. In the side of our lives is something called the Gray Swan Guild. We have 24 hours of activity that we have insanely set up to actually go through and try to make sense of the world. It's part of the Gray Swan Guild, and it starts April 15th at 8 a.m. in the morning, maybe a little bit earlier. And then April 27th, we have a follow-up webcast at 11 a.m. called Customer Wants 20, where we are going to surface this year's 20 top customer wants. So busy schedule this month, Andrea. What are you thinking? You've just got back from
Albania.
So
yeah, Albania. Well, it's interesting because on some levels, it feels really different. I live in the Bay Area in San Francisco, and I've been two places recently. One is in Copenhagen and Aalborg, Denmark, which was right after the big lockdown when they had some mink issues with COVID in Q4 of 2020. And then I flew into Albania, which was considered a high-risk area. So it's interesting to feel the world and different places and what is happening. To our point, we kind of feel the future in some ways, and we kind of feel the past in some ways. So in some ways, you go someplace and people are either wearing masks or not wearing masks and feeling social or not feeling social. And two things came to my mind with regards to future proofing. Early signs of palpable shifts are really, really dramatic when you travel, because you get off a plane and suddenly it feels like you're in some other time or some other environment. And so it's a really great reminder that there's ways to look at early signs of change and interpret what might be for business. And then the second thing is what felt really awkward, like socializing in public was really awkward. Making small talk was really awkward. So it's as we talk about these cognitive biases, it's the unknown unknowns and anchoring biases that we have from situations that we couldn't even have predicted that really, pull this into focus. So I think it's good. We always talk about disruption being a good thing, and certainly going to Albania and going to Scandinavia right in the middle of a COVID lockdown was eye-opening. So it was kind of a meta situation for me.
Interesting. Well, I mean, it seems like we're all kind of coming out of some element of COVID and getting vaccinated, or at least feeling like we're going to get there. So I think oftentimes we use this word liminal, like we're in this liminal period. We're not quite there yet, and we're not, from before. So yeah, maybe you've experienced that by your travels, Andrea.
Yes, I'll say that it's the words that you don't know, not just because I don't speak Albanian or Danish very well, but it's sounds and sensations that you don't have a word for that become the new trend. You don't know what to call it, and so don't try to call it something stale. Instead, sense it, feel it, have it be an experience, have it be visceral, have it be liminal, and then start putting together what that might mean later.
Good advice. And I'll refrain from singing my Albania song from Cheers for those people that know it. I've been bugging Andrea for the last 3 weeks with that song. So let's get into the Wellspring session. And it's funny, we sent a message out, and we've already got 6 authors that want to be part of our Futureproofing 66. But this gentleman, Soren, is at the top of the list for good reason as well. He's written a book called Death by Innovation Theater, 10 Corporate Innovation Lessons Learned by Startup. I just had the advantage of recording a session with Soren, and so we dove deeply into the book. I think he's got some slides prepared, and this is what his book looks like, Death by Innovation Theater. I love the title. I love the concept. And when you get into the reading, it'll be almost like a gut punch. Part of it as a startup where you're like, oh, that's totally been me before. And then part of it is as a corporate innovator, it's like, we've totally done that to startups before, right? The dance of the corporate innovation theater. So Soren's now chief commercial officer of a fintech company out of Denmark called Subio. He was former co-founder and CEO of a company called Earnit, which is kind of the biography of the book, the 5-year journey. I think he started in 2015, and they shut up operations in 2020. So it's a real refreshing take on, kind of a biography in terms of what went right, what went wrong, and then some advice for others that may pursue the same journey. He used to be an editor-in-chief of one of Denmark's biggest media, focused on finance. And so I've just found it refreshing talking to him already. I think you will as well. And I will cede the floor over to you, Soren, because I believe you have some slides to share.
And I have a request to please put the LinkedIn link in the chat.
I will do that. And so Soren, welcome to the group of 66 champions here. And we are with rapt attention. My hope is we can go through some of what's in your book and then open it up to our audience for any kind of questions.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Thanks for having me. And I hope I'm going through pretty loud and clear also on the visual side. But yes, like Sean said, I've written the book Death by Innovation Theater, and today I was actually going to go through some slides here. And first of all, I'm gonna talk a little bit about the startup behind the book. So Sean was so kind to do the intro of myself, so I'm not going to talk very much about me, but I'm going to talk about first of all the company Earnit, and then move on from there into what actually went wrong, and also what can you do to kind of prevent this type of innovation theater as well. But the startup behind the book, the short story. Well, the name is Earnit, and the pitch that I did many times started out with this girl right here. This is my daughter, and yes, she calls my credit card for the magic card. She thinks that it comes with this endless amount of money, and how should she know otherwise? She never sees or touches the money, and that is actually why that we built Earnit, and Earnit is this. Earnit is an IoT piggy bank connected to a gamified app and to a real-time bank account, and this. The vision for this was to empower children with essential lifelong skills, primarily within the financial space, for them to understand the concept of money. And well, we started out with a Kickstarter campaign, and we raised around $100,000 US on that Kickstarter campaign, and were mentioned across the globe in various different media, got investments afterwards as well. Some of the things that we did, I've just put a little thing around here. So we were mentioned in Fast Company and CNBC, CNET. We were mentioned in all the different medias here in Europe as well. We won several awards. Amongst others, the Visa Everywhere initiative of 2018. We presented at so many different venues. I can't even explain. I don't have the numbers on it anymore. But it seemed like we were on a spree here, because we were raising capital. We were getting awards. We were doing so many different pilots with different banks around the world that the success, I thought, was kind of inevitable. Of course, this was going to fly, because we were getting so much exposure and we're getting so much attention. So of course, this was going to be a good thing. But what I learned the hard way is that this is my daughter again, and yes, we actually ended up saying goodbye to Earnit and closed it all down in 2020, because we simply couldn't make this work. And the reasons why was kind of the starting point of the book. So I started to ask myself, what went wrong? And it started out as a very personal journey, where I started to write down some of the episodes that we've been through, and I just saw this pattern, where we fell into this pattern. And some of the main parts that I saw in the patterns were this. So we did a lot of pitching. We pitched around the world. We pitched in South America. We pitched in Asia. Pitched several times in the U.S. Part of Techstars out of the U.S., out of New York as well. Pitched all over Europe. We were talking the tech buzzwords, right? We were talking IoT. So the Internet of Things was really hyped at that moment, and every time we just said the IoT words, the listeners were listening. That came from investors, that came from the media, it came from the banks, and we did pilots. We did so many different pilots. I remember one pilot we actually did with one of the biggest banks out of the UK. We did 3 consecutive pilots for a couple of years with different product owners every time. Every time we thought, this time it's going to be a success. This time it's gonna work. So pilots were I'm the pilot master. I know how to make a pilot. I know how to present a pilot to a bank and kind of set up the milestones and get it through the different hoops. What I couldn't do on that was getting from the pilot to launching a real product into the market with the bank. That was the hard part. We did it with some banks, but we didn't do it with enough. So I guess this picture here really tells the story. Here I am pitching at the Singapore FinTech Festival in front of 3,000 people. We were here a part of an accelerator program where we were doing a pilot with Standard Chartered. And we were talking about the buzzword IoT. So this kind of sums up what actually happened. And the phrasing, the phrasing, it's innovation theater. That's how I've experienced it. That innovation theater is that you by creative new ideas are actually entertaining an audience. And that was what we did. And we were really good at it as well. But that did not make it into a success. So that's what the book is about. It's about how I experienced this innovation theater into 10 different subjects. And I'm gonna talk about 3 of them here, primarily on how to avoid innovation theater, because everybody's talking. Every time I'm talking about innovation theater, people are asking me, how can we avoid it? And yes, I can give my experience on how to avoid it, but it's of course, that is the hard part. How can we avoid this innovation theater? Because the people that are doing innovation theater, myself included, don't do it to be mean. They don't do it on a purpose. At least I don't think they do. But it just happens because there are just processes and internal things going on that just creates this innovation theater. So the 3 main learnings that I want to present here is, the first one is to be aware of innovation islands. We, among others, traveled to Belgium at one point to talk to a big bank out of Belgium. So I flew there, and I went into the bank. I got my security card at the reception, and then my host took me through the bank, and we went through aisles and aisles of white shirts and blue shirts and computers in a row, and then way down in the back there was this huge room with a panoramic view, a window to outside, and then there was like green on the floor, and there was these what's it called, the whiteboards that you can draw on, and you could sit in the different bean bags, and that was where the innovation department was. That was where they were, and they were very, very different from the rest of the bank. They didn't wear shirts; they were t-shirts, right? And so they didn't wear the dress shirts. So I think that this type of innovation island, both in the physical presence of it, but also in what I learned later on with this Belgian bank, was that the innovation department, they had no clue on how to get a startup or a fintech through procurement. So that meant that we were stuck with somebody that loved our product, and yes, we want to buy it. We wanted, you're going to be millionaires on this, because it's capturing the dreams and the hopes of children, but they had no idea how to get this to market with the bank. And that's what I've experienced so many different times. I can give you hundreds of experiences with these types of innovation islands, where they detached from the rest of the bank, of the corporate, and sometimes I've even heard these innovation departments calling themselves innovation clowns. So if you have the identity of being an innovation clown, it's going to be very, very hard to be taken serious by the rest of the company. The second part I want to mention here is to always make a business case, always. And I guess this is one of the more controversial ones. I've heard from several people that they both agree and disagree on the business case part. My point here is, at least in my experience with Earnit, was that we were petrified of doing a business case with our different corporate partners, because we were a retention tool. We were giving good experiences to children. So where was the business case? We did eventually get a business case, but it took us a long time to get to that business case. I think the main thing that frightens me here is that we were never really challenged on this by the innovation departments. They really didn't see the necessity of the business case either. And I think that was a big mistake, because if everybody else in the company needs to make a business case to get a product to market, then of course the innovation department also needs to make business cases, even though it's just retention, or it's something that looks good, or can be a marketing effort. I don't know, but you really need to make the effort into making that business case, because that's the only way that you're also going to be prioritized versus the other parts that the corporate can also do. And I think this is really about prioritization. If you as a startup want your product to be prioritized, you need to speak the language of the corporate, not only of the innovation departments, which means that you need to be able to speak the language of the corporate when it comes to the business case, when it comes to the data, and showing them this could actually be a positive business case. Everybody knows that business cases are bollocks, and it's just mumbo jumbo with numbers, but still you have to make it and then play that game. And I think that's really what you need to do as both a startup and also people within the innovation in the corporates. The last thing I want to mention here is the question to pilot or not to pilot. Like I mentioned with Earnit, we made so many pilots with banks out of Ireland, banks out of Eastern Europe, banks out of Singapore, out of the US as well, out of the UK. I can go on and on. But the learning for me is that a pilot is not necessarily bad. You can do a pilot. The thing that you have to be aware of as a startup, at least, is that you have to say to the corporate what will happen if the pilot is a success. You have to be able to articulate what success looks like, and how do you as a startup go from the pilot that has been in that innovation department? How do you go from that into the corporate and to the rest of the corporate and going to market with them? So that means that before you engage in the pilot, and this is what we did wrong with Earnit, before you engage with the pilot, you have to ask the questions about what is a success and what is going to happen afterwards. And not only just asking what is going to happen afterwards, you're going to have the price discussion as well. You have to have the price discussion really early on, saying, okay, if this is a success and we go to market with you, what's the price of this going to be? Because if you don't have that discussion early on, and then you do a free pilot, or you do something that is really cheap, then you're just giving away a lot of innovation theater to the bank, instead of kind of saying we need to engage with the budget holder for when we're going to go to market with you. I mean, you're going to need to engage with that person to also say, what's the price going to be? And that can involve procurement. It can involve the other business units. So this is really one of my biggest pillars also in the book, is that if you're doing pilots, then do pilots that actually have an aim of going to market as well. And yeah, that was actually it. Pretty short slides here, but I guess leaves room for some discussion and hopefully some questions as well.
That was powerful, Soren. Wow. And plus I got to see your daughter as well, which was cool. I think you referenced her in a previous chat. Now I'm like super involved in your life because she's so cute and wonderful. So
thank you.
I thought I'd open it up to the floor. I've asked Soren quite a few questions. I'm wondering if Andrea, you might want to jump into the void. First of all, I think some of what Soren's talked about, you're nodding your head to, but any thoughts or questions for Soren?
Yeah, so the first one is, it's so great that you came clean, because I think a lot of people are embarrassed of exactly the points that you made. And so there's this the reason it's called innovation theater is that people are doing one thing, but they have a lot of anxiety because they sort of have a sense that there's a lack of authenticity about some of it. And so people experience it, but it's hard to come clean. Also, since I've lived in Silicon Valley and ran a technology company, a SaaS company here for years, it reminds me of marriage, weddings, and dating. They're all completely different. And if you start thinking that, like, cause somebody's amazing and you've got great chemistry, that you're going to want to like clean pots together and raise children together and decide, you know, how to spend your money together, that's a false concept. If you think that it's all about the wedding instead of the marriage and the life together, you know, you get sort of seduced. So I think it's great you broke it down. Like, you know, people do get rewarded, unfortunately, for being really great, charismatic showmen, for lack of a better word. And, you know, you look at Techstars, you look at hackathons, you look at everything that goes on in Silicon Valley for initial seed funding. And it's kind of the opposite. You know, it's kind of like, let's have chemistry, let's date, let's have big egos, let's go to Stanford. Nothing's wrong with any of those. But at the end of the day, I think that what you said is so important. You know, these islands are reinforced when you have really cool people doing lots of cool designs that have great fonts. The business case for something small is very different from commitment, and it's like a marriage, right? So, you know, yeah, but are you going to want to clean the floors, and are you going to want to, you know, pick up the kids at school? There's a whole different conversation versus, oh my God, we've got sexual chemistry. That's fantastic. And then piloting, you know, that's what I wanted to focus on. Sean and I talk a lot about scaling, and we call it escape velocity. And I used to call it 1, 2, 3, a million, you know, like you go linear, but then someone grabs the market. I'm curious about, because I've been following a lot of the blockchain currencies, you know, that are happening, the Bitcoins, like China, you know, having these things. It feels as if there's a winner take all that's about to happen in fintech in some critical areas. And so lots of the small players are going to be wiped out when all of a sudden name the person or the country or the currency is like, okay, that's the new system standard. That's my observation about what happens to blitz scale, you know, that you at some point you just need tons of capital, non-additive momentum, something bigger that happens that's not incremental. You did pilot 1, 2, 3, and even if they promise you the world, somebody comes in and takes the whole game. So Sean and I have our theories about it, but I'm so interested in what you really think tips the scale from even incremental pilot successes. If you add bank 1, 2, 3, 5, 10, that suddenly you become the unicorn. Like what happens in that magic zone?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I've actually thought about it as well. Like, how many pilots do you have to? How many pilots for free do you have to make before you can take the first cost on a pilot? And how many of those pilots can you do before you can stop doing pilots and just be, well, we are a company, we're not doing pilots, the product is working. And I've had one of my mentors, I remember, also saying to me at Earnit, saying that stop calling yourself a startup and stop doing pilots, because you're just framing yourself into that it's startup, that it's free, or that it's very, very cheap. You're a company, right? The product is working, you're a company. I think that's some of the things that I've been thinking about as well after or during writing the book. But to answer your question, Andrea, I think that one of the things that I see also in my current position at Sobio is that once you can kind of go from selling to the innovator of the enterprise to more of the, let's say, the majority of at least within banks, then you can see that something is happening on the scaling side, when you can kind of prove that your product is not only being seen as innovative and exciting to innovators who are in love with technology and kind of are the first movers in a lot of stuff, and you can also start selling to the more conservative people. Then I think you're ready to scale, right? So I think that's for me one of the key things that I'm looking for, is that who are we engaging with? Is it somebody that's really into the technology and the marketing, or is it somebody that's actually more concerned with the everyday life of the end users and can see that this can have both a cost effectiveness, going costs down, or a revenue generating side as well. I think that is for me one of the key parts of it. But I think it's hard to say, because I also think that pilots can be very, very useful for a company, because it can give you those initial understandings of your client and of the end users. It can really show you that you thought you could build something over here that was your own little. We experienced that with the Earnit, for instance. We built something in the beginning that was purely B2C, then we pivoted towards B2B, like so many do, and then we thought we could just take the same product and sell it to the banks. And no, you can't. You have to build it a different way, because the way that they want a product is very, very different from if you just can kind of build it on your own and build it with the newest technology. You have to be much more alert on what it is that the bank in this case is wanting, right?
Can I have one more question, Sean?
Of course.
So one more question, because that's interesting. So let's look at the other end of the spectrum. I think about Meg Whitman and Jeffrey Katzenberg and Quibi, and sort of starting big, going, we've got the big guns, we've got the big guys signed on, we've got the big company support, and then there's still a failure. So, the opposite of the first argument, which is don't go 1, 2, 3 and expect $1 million without something completely different. But what if, what if you've got everything lined up where, other than China saying this will be our currency, and, those are kind of what I call one fell swoop, like, overnight that can just be willed into being. But what should a company do with this innovation startup that's sitting there in the wings, to really ensure or improve the chances of it becoming really successful and gaining huge traction from the large perspective? Because, I would have thought that Quibi, if you would ask me, I would have bet on Quibi and invested in it, and I would have lost a lot of money. Yeah,
I think that too much money too early is just as lethal as the opposite. I think we've seen that again and again. There's so many studies also showing that if you have if you come from a wealthy family and you have a lot of money and you can build whatever, then you're not gonna be able to take the decisions that or the prioritizations at the moment that you need to do it. So I'm a firm believer in starting as a two-man band and a napkin, and then starting from there and then kind of building it up from there. So I'd rather start that, even though I know it's painful and everything else. But I'd rather start like that. I think it has a much greater success rate than if you do it the opposite way around. Of course, there can be founders that have the framework that they can just apply to the next product, the next product, the next product. But I still think that they are aware of that they need that kind of what's it called, like the not having everything on the playground to play with, right? They just, let's start with the swings and see what can I do with the swings before I actually get access to the sandbox and to everything else. I really believe in kind of starting with small, because that also makes you innovate. So I think that would be my take on that. And I forgot to actually comment on what you said before around the winner takes all kind of scenario that we're seeing, because I really believe that is what is happening within some of the fintech spaces, especially when it comes to aggregators like Plaid, like Yodlee, like Nordic API Gateway, like Tink. That's what we're seeing there right now, is that some of these players are going to move in and become the one that's going to give that type of service. And we're going to see the same thing, especially within fintechs, within other verticals as well. Yeah, so I don't know if that was kind of going back to the first question, but that was what I heard you saying as well.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to Sean, but I have one more question if no one else does.
Well, we'll open it up to other folks. If anybody else might want to query Soren on either the making of the book, what the book's about, or his life in general. Any questions from the gang?
I've got a question, Soren, and it may be based on what area in the world you are living and operating in. So this question might have a different perspective. In my experience, there's a difference coming out of the IT world, being involved in massive IT implementations in my previous life. We had a differentiation between a pilot and a prototype. Have you had any in your journey in the last 5 years? Was a prototype not perhaps another opportunity? Because the way we worked with it at the time is if we did a prototype for a client, it was a joint venture, they were fully into it. So they couldn't really get out of it very quickly. So it's not like it wasn't for free, so we got paid for it as well. Yeah. But there was a lot more ownership in that way of creating a prototype to see that and put it into the market and to see that it's working, versus just doing a pilot. So have you had any experiences of that in your journey in some parts of the world that you were sharing this during your pitching? And then the other question I'll just put them both to you.
Yeah.
It's just sharing a bit of my own experience with innovation in the financial industry. It is an industry where there's a lot of red tape, slow decision making. It's not your earlier adopters necessarily, the traditional big banks and the insurance companies as well. So they take very long. You can't wait 6 months for a decision, because then you lost the velocity of what that possibility is about. So just to share that point of view as well, that it's for me, it's not just a hard, fast rule across all industries. It depends on which industry you are promoting and sharing your idea with. And then how soon you can get it rooted, that it can create roots and start to grow, even if it's small, doesn't matter how big you begin. But it was my experience as well. And I've had many times where I was told, you are going to be so frustrated because you're not going to get the decisions you want to, because of the industry, not because of the innovation that you are sharing with them or how you want to help them innovate, but purely because of the industry. Thank you.
Yeah, but I totally agree on what you're saying when it comes to let's start with the latter question on the industry, that the banks are taking a very long time to make decisions on this. So the sales cycles now that we have also with Subio they are pretty much 12 to 24 months, right? So that's the sales cycle that we are experiencing, and I guess what they are suddenly trying to do when it comes to doing some of these pilots or making innovations is that they're trying to make that very, very quick. And suddenly that they're trying to do something new in their normal process, right? They're trying to skip some of the red tape to go quickly to the next phase of this. And some of them are really struggling with doing that. So I totally hear what you're saying when it comes to the industry. I think the industry is very, very important in how long this innovation cycle is going to take. But my experience has primarily been with the financial industry, right? So that's where this book has been written from as well. The second part about the prototype, I laugh a little bit because I've heard the name prototype, pilot, minimum viable product. All these different terms are just being thrown around by innovation departments, who oftentimes don't have the same skill set as the rest of the bank, for instance, has. So sometimes I've experienced that people from innovation have been kind of, let's say, they've been juniors, or they have been people from other parts of the bank where they're kind of like, we don't know where to put this guy. We'll put him in innovation, kind of thing. And that means that suddenly you don't have the same skill set and the same experience and the same kind of standards that the rest of the bank is looking for. But when it comes to doing prototypes versus doing pilots, for instance, I would say from our experience is that once we are, maybe this is the way I understand it from what I would say, prototyping would be something that you would do if you are a consultancy agency and you're going to do a new product for a client. Then you do a design sprint, you do a prototyping, and then you have a product that you're ready to go to market with. That's not the way that you work as a startup. If you do that, then you're a consultancy agency. Then you're not a startup and you're not doing a product. I think there are product companies that do products, and then there are project-based companies that do different projects. And yes, we've been kind of, some of these banks have kind of been, we can just do a design sprint, and then we can do all the screens all over, and we can do another piggy bank. Like no, this is the product that we've built. Either you take this or you don't. And that's also kind of, I think, the experience that we've had with some of these bigger corporates is that they are expecting sometimes that it's starting from scratch, and they're the ones that are going to make it alongside us, whereas that's not the way that a product company necessarily works.
I'll throw something in here. I know Sanjay had just put something into the chat. Soren, where do you go from here? Which could be a really big question or a small question, depending on how you interpret it. But I think it was probably the same question I had to you in our session together, where it's just like, you've got the benefit of 5 years of the startup experience. Now you're in a slightly larger company. So I think behind it, it's like, what's the next 5 years of your life look like?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm really enjoying where I am today as a chief commercial officer at Soapbox, because Soapbox, actually, when I started at Soapbox, we were kind of where Earnit ended. So when I started at Soapbox, we were around 12, 15 people. And that's kind of where Earnit also ended. So, and now we're at 35 people at Soapbox. So I'm actually feeling that I'm experiencing the first part of doing a startup with Earnit, and I'm taking the second part here which is more the scaling part with Soapbox. And then I don't know what's happening after that. I don't. But definitely I'm not done building, making, creating new products. But I'm really conscious of that. I like my engine runs on purpose. So I really need that the company has a purpose that I can see myself in, and then I'm naive enough to think that with that also will come some kind of a business incentive as well.
Rob, I know you came off screen halfway through. Do you have a question, Rob?
Yes, I do. Great work, Soren. I'm also in the business of software in enterprise, insurance, and fintech, and I feel your pain. And I'm glad you put the book out. I just commented on someone else's post about innovation theater, And I know there's a lot of dark humor about it in what we do for a living. But I was going to ask you more in your Civio front on, are there any tips or that you'd like to share with us around pricing pilots that you're comfortable with, or arrangements or deals that you're more comfortable with than in innovation theater?
So you're talking about if there are pricing parts that could kind of reduce the innovation theater kind of risk?
Yes.
Yeah. In my opinion, and this is what we do with Subio actually. When we do pilots, we only do them if we can discuss the pricing once we launch the product to market. So that means that we are actually trying to use the pilot to talk to the right people that has the budget to go to market afterwards. That means that then suddenly we are being led into the room with the budget holder from that business entity. And we're also going to talk to procurement because they need to be a part of this discussion. So we don't do pilots unless we have that discussion and we have a sign off on who is the budget owner and what is the price going to be once we kind of go past the pilot. So for me, that's the most important part, is that we can discuss those parts before we talk about the pilot per se. So the pricing of the pilot, I guess with Earnit, we did pilots that were between 30 to 50,000 US dollars. 30 to 50,000 US dollars. That was kind of the normal pricing that we had per pilot that took around 3 months with different milestones. But that was the normal pricing, and actually we did a pretty good business out of that. Like again, I might could make a business out of just doing pilots, but it was just not there. Like I didn't have the stamina to do that. It didn't give us enough. So I think that it's in that sense it can work. And then you also cut it into different pieces. I like pilots that have different milestones, which gives you payments on different milestones, and that you agree on those milestones as well. It's coming back to the success of the pilot. You have to define what is the success, how many people need to use it, how many times do they use it, how much are they gonna spend with it, or whatever is going to be the threshold here. And once you hit those different marks, then the next type of, let's say, funding should run your way. And I think that actually is a good way to do it, because it both pushes the startup to go into it, but also the corporate to go into it as well. But I think pilots for me are primarily on an earlier stage. We don't do pilots at Subio with our current product. We do pilots if it's new products with the same type of engine that we have today. If I don't know if that makes sense, but it's we again, I don't want to be framing us as a startup that does pilots. We're a company that has a product, and if we do pilots, it's because it's an unproven product that we want them to help us with, right? So I think that's the difference.
I have one last question. If you could bash the biggest myth in terms of this whole process, right? So we've inherited startups and tech stars and hackathons and design thinking. You know, we've inherited so much that it's hard to peel that away and just say, okay, clean slate. What should the relationship between edge ideas and core ideas be to give them the best chance to get to scale? In 30 seconds.
That's a big question. That's a big question.
No, but like, what's the biggest myth you wish you could get rid of? Like, please stop doing this.
Pitch competitions. I'm just tired of pitch competitions. I'm tired of pitch competitions with the red carpet, with the cool walk-on music, with somebody that's kind of enhancing the crowd, and then there's a prize to the winner. I'm just tired of that. Please stop doing that.
Great. That's all I had. Sean, back to you.
I love it. That was quite blunt. It's like, and it's funny. There are people out there that there's a whole ecosystem around pitches, isn't there? Like there are people that inform people about pitches, the people that work at incubators to make the pitches better, people that are ex entrepreneurs that can help you with your pitch. It is an industry unto itself.
Well, I mean, I will say my last thing on that. It's just like getting people to date, right? Like what to wear on a date, what to say on your date, how to get a better date, where to take someone for dinner on a date. And it's like, it depends what your goal is. If your goal is marriage, might not be the right emphasis.
I think that could be the topic of Soren's next book, Dating as Innovation Theater, and just completely take those concepts and layer them into finding your next new love, right?
No, but I think that I'm a pitch mentor here at Copenhagen FinTech myself. I help startups to pitch. I believe that pitching is a good way of kind of condensing what it is that you do and telling it in 5 minutes or whatever it is, right? I think that's valuable, but it's more like if it is being put into an entertainment concept of a winner and a loser and cool walk-on music and all that jazz, then I'm just getting tired of it.
Great. I mean, this is the type of depth of authorship that we'd love to bring into 66 ongoing. So I appreciate this today, Soren, and doing double bill as well, because I had you for the previous hour on another different segment that we'll both air. So appreciate it. We got 3 or 4 other quickies in terms of just covering off our agenda. So Soren, your prerogative in terms of staying or not, but I do want to thank you. We'll also post when we send this video out a link to where we should get your book. So I'm guessing Amazon, unless you tell me there's a preferred other place we should buy your book. As already mentioned in one of the chat things, just a fantastic set of insights, which I had myself nodding to as I was reading it. So appreciate it, Soren. In the time we have left, because I know myself and Andrea have a segment to get to in about 7 or 8 minutes. We are the enemy, or the calendar is our enemy. We thought every month we would surface up just 3 things that we're playing about in terms of things that we've either produced or what have you. I guess the 3 on my list, and I'll ask Andrea to add. We didn't do she's just jumped off a flight from Albania, so we haven't had a good chance to debrief. But I just posted one of our first medium posts in a while, and I did a 400-year forensics of what innovation is. And about 400 years ago, you were probably burned at the stake if you were an innovator. You were essentially against the church, and you were a quack, and you were a heretic. And so I've looked at the postmodern version of innovation and how it's changed in 5 different stages. So I'll put that into the chat right now, and we'll overlay it at some point on. But that was a bit of a rabbit hole for myself. The second thing is we just had a webcast called the 30 Emerging Technologies, where I did an updated version of the 30 technologies that will play a big role over your next decade. And since we did the previous list 2 years ago, the list didn't change that much, but I guess one of the biggest observations is I broke AI into about 3 or 4 different parts. And does anybody want to guess what was number 1 on our list of future technologies that will impact your next decade? I feel like Ferris Bueller's teacher right now. Anybody? Bueller. Augmented intelligence. So I think over the next 20 years anyway, I think it's less about how robots are going to take over us or droids or AI, and it's more about how they're going to work alongside humans. I think that's been the biggest challenge that we've seen around COVID. And so based on 5 different criteria, augmented intelligence is the number 1 thing that will impact us over the next little bit. And then in support of what we're doing later on the month, we are surfacing the top 20 customer wants. This was also a piece of research we did 2 years ago. We're updating it. And so April 27th, we'll have a whole bunch of, they could be similar or they could be new wants, but we're looking at 20 things that drive businesses based on customers, regardless of what industry you're in. Andrea, any things that you've been working on?
Well, to me, the biggest thing is that, and this is not a commercial, but it is really interesting to us. We started this thing called Futureproofing You. And once again, it's not a pilot. So there you go. And it's not a hackathon. We didn't start it with, jazz hands, trying to tell everyone how wonderful this was. We are practitioners, and we realized that the world was in a heap of pain with regards to corporate innovation, and that the magic beans were not working to get the innovation that needs to happen fast enough into the into the scale that you need in corporations. So we just started Futureproofing You, and it's a go. I mean, it's really amazing to finally do the dream. And so we'll be looking to the community for lots of things. I mean, number one is we're going to be growing it. So we'll be talking to you about that. Number two is what's going on with this online learning. There's a lot that really is terrible, quite frankly. Poor kids sitting in front of Zoom screens all day long. So both in terms of content, in terms of how we grow it, and also in terms of the technologies. We are definitely looking for the community. And also I would say that this community will be great because I'm sure that this is going to proliferate. We think we're onto something. So we'll be looking at how we can make it global. We can partner with you all. We can develop some cool other pods so that we can license the information, because we think the world needs this right now. And it's going to, we'll get through this 90-day sprint, and then we'd love to connect with everyone about how we might plant the seeds in other places and other ways and get it to grow big. So that's the thing I'm most excited about.
And I made my Star Trek known within our Futureproofing You. Our first cohort is called the Kirk cohort. So I would hate to be 6 cohorts in and have to be the Scott Bakula cohort or whatever that version of Star Trek was. But I'm going to open it up the floor for 2 people to give their quickie in terms of what they're working on. Anybody that wants to, it's called the Soapbox Session. I will tell you one thing that we're going to expose within the email that goes back to you on Friday, which will have this video and other things. I've looked at cognitive biases. There's about 176 of them, if you can believe it, if you look at Wikipedia. And we've actually looked at innovation and categorizing the top 48 on innovation. And I will probably throw a mini quiz at you when we send this back out. So that's one of the big ideas. We'll cover that one off. Soapbox, you have a minute. Anybody that wants to say anything that they're working on and how we can collaborate. Any thoughts, people?
I'll go first. 1 minute, less than a minute. So I'm Rob Tyree. I'm Ironstone Advisory, and I've got a cohort of startups and scale-ups and programs in enterprise. One of my key ones that's coming up on the week of April 16th. On the 16th, my company called ArtGate is running a virtual reality art show based on their platform. So it's a complete idea of an Oculus Rift headset in which you are in 3D space in the art gallery. And what that product is it's an art gallery that's meant to be an adjunct to a bricks and mortar art gallery. So our clients at ArtGate are art galleries who want to be in VR space, an extension of showing all the art inside their bricks and mortar in 3D space. So each year the company does what's called ArtGate International. So there's an international art show online. And one of the things that they're pretty proud of is that we have Beeple as someone who shows their art on ArtGate International, because it's the first 3D gallery. This is the artist who came to fame in selling $69 million US dollars in NFTs for a record sale. And we initiated the relationship with him a year ago, and when no one was talking about any NFTs other than cat pets. So ArtGate International, April 16th, reach out to me if you want to get a ticket to the show.
Wonderful. And I will get your information and we'll put that in an email out to everybody as well. We have maybe just a quickie if anybody wants to say what they're working on.
I'll just say a quickie because I'm working on so many things at the same time, but I would really love to connect with you all again when we have more time, because we're busy with a process of action. I'm glad what you shared, Soren, because we're busy with the process to prepare organizations for the new. So your future-proofing, there's so much synergy. So traditionally you would call it a change management role, but it's about a lot more than that. It's getting them in the right frames of mind, so working with their mental paradigms as well as with sense shifting them into a new reality that they can be more open and more receptive to what is coming, but be more prepared as well. But that's a whole discussion by itself. Thank you.
That is a good tease. And if you want to send me anything on that as well, Andrea, that'd be great. We'll make sure that gets in. I'm going to close this out just because we have only a couple minutes left in our hour together. I want to really thank Soren for doing this. This was great. Really good. And my hope is this won't be our last chance to actually talk about any kind of theater innovation or otherwise. As well, just a couple of big things that we can include you on if you're interested. Myself and Andrea are launching the Futureproofing Awards today. So by June 22nd, we will be celebrating the best that do futureproofing in the world. If any of you and our champions want to be judges, please let us know. Or if you want to nominate, which is also something that we're allowing people to do. And then finally, a little bit of a plug for the Grey Swan Guild, which myself and Andrea are hosting, I think, a couple of different sessions on April 15th and 16th. I'll probably be coming out to some of you to actually guest on my hour. It's 24 hours of making sense of the world. And if you go to greyswanguild.org, I think we'll probably have a website page up either today or tomorrow with the full schedule. So, so that's it from me. Andrea, any parting thoughts before we leave?
No, I always have a lot to think about for the future.